Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Coming to you from the hot and humid Mississippi again. On this week's show, we will continue with the second half of my interview with Nate Dressel, decorated Green Beret combat veteran who was removed from the ballot for the GOP primary in Tennessee House District 10 by the cowardly Tennessee Republican Party Chairman Scott Golden and the rest of his weak goons on the state executive committee. Since this is a part 2 episode, we will still be on the topic of leadership, but we will cover down on the topic of lies in next week's show. I hope that many of you have had the chance to read my latest blog post that I shared across my social media pages this past Saturday, where I did call out Scott Golden as a coward. I also hope that many of you answered the call to action that I shared on social media last Friday. For my fellow Tennesseans, let this stand as a warning. Until we have some change in the Republican Party here in the volunteer state, both at the county and state level, our state will continue to decline. The commies will regain control of the General Assembly, and the slippery slope we are on right now will turn into a cliff from which there will be little chance of recovery. Before we continue with the show, I have to put out the disclaimer again, so here it goes. The following content is approved by Larry Linton for TN12, candidate for the GOP nomination for Tennessee House of Representatives District 12, Larry Linton, Treasurer. Now, let's get on with this week's episode, which is a continuation of my interview with Nate Dressel. Welcome to the Liberty, Leadership, and Lies podcast. On this show, we will discuss the assaults on our liberty by the very institution we the people created to secure our liberty. We will also compare and contrast the actions of people in leadership positions to the servant leadership that is needed to protect our God-given, constitutionally protected rights. Additionally, we will break down the many lies that elected and unelected officials in government and media spin every day in order to secure for themselves positions of power and influence that are antithetical to the system of government our founding fathers created and passed down to us. Your host on this program is Larry Linton, a 30-year veteran of the United States Navy who also runs his own leadership consulting company. He is also a candidate for the Republican Party's nomination to represent Tennessee's House District 12, which includes Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, Pittman Center, Weirs Valley, Seymour, and parts of Sevierville, and most of Sevier County. So here is your host, Larry Linton.
Our elected officials are so wildly out of touch that, oh man, I have no idea what's going on in this building. But they're so wildly out of touch that it's hard to discuss issues of 2024 and modern problems with somebody who still thinks it's 1972.
Right. And that's the way they operate. That's why people like me, we're existential threats to their level of comfort. I mean, liberty be damned. As long as they keep their seat at the table, they don't care what goes on. And as long as somebody throws a Republican label on it, it's going to be good. They could make drag queen shows, call it a Republican drag queen show, and they're going to get out there and cheerlead for it, as long as it's labeled as such and it keeps their seat at the table.
Well, we could do a Lincoln Reaganette dance dinner next year.
Well, my county hasn't even done their Lincoln Day dinner yet.
They did ours. They didn't advertise it anywhere. So if you looked at the table sponsors, it was essentially, and it's supposed to be a fundraiser event for the party, right?
Right.
Okay, so it was essentially the party leadership who purchased all the tables, filled the room, and if you really wanted to be a fundraiser, they could have just donated that money directly to the party.
Right.
No idea what they raised or didn't raise, but there was frustration with when pictures were posted afterwards, and people said, "Hey, was this a closed event? Like,
right?
None of us even had the opportunity to buy tickets."
Because you're not part of the country club. You can't come.
Yeah. So
that's the same thing here. And if you look at we talked about your party's website, and we talked about the Sevier County Republican Party's website still lists Art Swan as our state senator, That changed 4 years ago. They had up until like 6 months ago, they still had the 2022 Lincoln Day dinner advertised.
Yeah, I mean, where? Okay, so let's say that somebody moves to the area, somebody's new here and wants to be involved in the party. Where do they go learn about? Okay, what's the party platform? What are the values? What are the meetings? What events are coming up? What social outreach do they have? Where? This is an honest question. Where do they go to learn about
Right.
it? I don't know.
Right. There's no public meetings here in Sevier County. The website's 2 to 4 years old. Social media presence is 0.
So
And so they're just banking on people that are moving to Sevier County are gonna vote Republican no matter what. So as long as they have an R by their name on the ballot, we're golden. We can still hold our little once a year putt putt fundraiser, $1,000 a ticket to sit there and play a putt putt game inside a building, or maybe attend a Lincoln Day dinner if it's advertised.
yeah,
That's what they're banking on. So when you and I come in there and say, "Hey, no, we got to stand for the Constitution. We got to actually represent the National Republican Party platform." Ooh, that's counterproductive to my sitting at this table.
absolutely. Well, here's one of the things that I've done recently, um, which is actually part of the reason why the local party loathes me so much. Uh, my wife and I, in March, went out to Nashville to the State Young Republicans Federation, uh, annual meeting,
Mhm.
and we chartered the Lakeway Area Young Republicans Federation, which encompasses Granger County, Hamlin County, and Jefferson County. Now, the Young Republicans Federation is a completely standalone organization from the Republican Party. Uh, this light is going bonkers. I'm gonna paraphrase here, but the basically the mission statement of the Young Republicans Federation is to educate, recruit, and encourage younger voters, younger conservative voters, to actually get out and vote, be socially active, be able to vocalize their conservative message and their conservative views, um, and to hopefully funnel these people into elected positions and eventually the Republican Party. But if you look at the verbiage throughout the Young Republicans Federation, it is much more focused on conservative values and bringing younger, more energetic, more in touch voters and leaders into the movement. Way more so on the conservative message than it is that we are a recruiting arm for the Republican Party, because it is not a recruiting arm for the Republican Party. That can be a very good byproduct,
Right.
but the main goal is to encourage younger conservatives to get out there and vote and to be socially active, because you know damn well that the Democrats are doing it, the liberals are doing it, the leftists are doing it, and they are doing it from 14 all the way up to 104. They're united on that front. We're not.
They're better at it.
They're way better at it. But yeah, so my wife and I chartered the Lakeway Area Young Republicans Federation, um, which, like I said, it's a standalone organization. It's open to all ages, so voting members within the organization can be 18 to 40 years old, but affiliate members can be any age. So if you want to be part of the Lakeway Area Young Republicans, I don't care if you're 84. If you are proactive, conservative, and you're energetic about what we're doing, show up and be part of it. But that in itself is a threat to the party, which it shouldn't be. They know that people like us are better at outreach, we're better at recruiting, we're better at retention. I mean, hell, you and I in our military jobs, that's part of what we do. We have to recruit and retain the good soldiers and sailors, right? We need to retain them. They know that we're better at doing it, and instead of getting on board with something that's proactive and energetic, they're fighting it. They're fighting it as hard as they can. Um, if you look at Texas, so there's young Republican federations all across the country. This Texas GOP and the Texas Young Republicans Federation are at such odds that the Young Republicans put out a press release last year saying that if the Texas GOP chair doesn't vacate, they will have zero affiliation with them. They won't recruit for them. They won't funnel for them. They won't campaign for them. They're going to keep running with their own conservative messaging. And when we look at what's going on right now, myself plus 13 others, a lot of them younger age bracket than what's sitting up in Nashville right now. When they're booting all these people off the ballot, it does not bode well for the Young Republican Federation recruiting and funneling for the Republican Party.
Yeah.
And that's myopic and short-sighted leadership.
Yeah. So I think while the statewide GOP, Scott Golden in particular, there may or may not be corruption up there, but there is definitely a lack of strong leadership
Yeah.
because they rely so much on what I call the corrupt or corrosive, toxic leadership at the county levels. Because if there was good, solid Republican leadership at the county levels, they would be our biggest cheerleaders in growing the Republican Party.
They would be. When they at the county level, you would think that they should be the biggest cheerleaders of guys like us, organizations like the Young Republicans Federation. They should be the biggest cheerleaders of these types of people and these organizations. Because as I've pointed out to almost everyone in the party here, you have no plan for recruitment. Your recruitment is absolute zero. Your retention is negative because you're literally dying off. Like, you have a negative retention and zero recruitment. How long can you sustain this?
Like, until the only time it's going to get better is when they actually turn blue. I mean, I lived in Virginia, so Tidewater, Virginia, for a good portion of my career. And I was there watching it go from red to purple to blue because the local GOPs were not active.
Right.
So they just banked on historical, hey, we're always going to be red. Well, look at Virginia now.
Yeah, it was 4 years ago they told me that, and I was just, like I said, dumbfounded. I mean, jaw on the floor, thinking, I moved here for a reason. I moved here for conservative Republican values. I moved here because I thought it was a strong red conservative area, and that's your approach. It's always been red, so it always will be. Oh my goodness, we're in for a bumpy ride. With this Young Republicans Federation that we chartered up here, I think it can be a very robust and active organization. Yeah, whatever. They kicked me off the ballot. That's totally separate from this Young Republicans Federation. I'm charging forward with that regardless.
Right.
But I think it can be a very active and robust organization, and ultimately, excuse me. Ultimately, when the Republican Party does have meetings here, essentially they like read the meeting minutes from the last meeting, which is the meeting minutes from the meeting before the last meeting.
Right.
And then they read a couple thank you letters like, hey, the Republican Party gave the Women's Republican Club $500 for a potluck dinner. And then they read thank you letters back and forth. It's like, the same 20 people want to show up to those meetings over and over again, but that's not attracting anyone new. Or if somebody new does show up, they don't come back again. So my goal with this new organization is that we're going to we'll have meetings, we'll have an actual agenda of things that we're going to do, be that, getting out there doing social activities, whether it's, going over to the leftists at Walter State and setting up a booth, or we're just doing canvassing over there, going out to the county fairs, or hell, like I want to have Young Republican Range Day. Like, let's all go out to the shooting range. We'll learn about the Second Amendment. We'll learn some gun safety. We'll blast off some rounds, and then we'll have our little Young Republicans meeting after it. Like, why should we all just sit there in a room dribbling pudding out the corners of our mouths and read thank you letters back and forth to each other? Let's go out and make a difference. That's the only way that we're going to recruit. It's the only way that we're going to keep this area red. It ain't going to stay red because it's always been red. That's not going to fly.
Right.
So I don't know. I think up here we've got some really good things on the horizon. We've got a couple more hard chargers that are on board with this. Funny enough, I did attend the Lincoln Reagan dinner at the beginning of this month. We had a Young Republicans table there. When they asked the veterans to stand up in the room, of the roughly 200 people in the room, half of the veterans were at the Young Republicans table.
Nice.
You're telling me that in this whole room of conservatives, all the way up to age 90 something. What, only three other people threw their name in the hat for service over the last 90 years, aside from the four guys at my table?
right? So
I mean, like, military service isn't the standard bearer for Republican or political values by any stretch, but it was mind-boggling to me that in a room full of such supposedly deeply conservative and patriotic people, nobody was willing to throw their name in and take that sacrifice.
right, and I think the one thing that military service does provide is I think we have a deeper understanding and an appreciation of the Constitution, right? Because these people are loyal to people. The veterans and the military service members, especially when you get up in years, you realize that hey, it's loyalty to a document. It's not
Should
a
be.
loyalty to a person. It's loyalty to the country's founding principles of individual liberty and the protections that we provide for that. So we do
Well,
have a deeper appreciation of that, and that's why I think a lot of people avoid politics because we see, or most veterans see, that that's not really what it's about anymore.
no. I mean, in theory, veterans should have that allegiance to the Constitution.
Mm.
Um, I mean, I'll be completely honest. I hit 20 years here this November. It was probably year 14 or 15 during one of my reenlistments.
Mm.
Where it's like, I should go read this thing that I'm swearing allegiance to.
Right?
So, I mean, but yeah, for over a decade of military service, it's like, yeah, I swear allegiance to the Constitution, foreign enemies, foreign domestic, blah, blah, blah. And then one day I was like, what does this mean?
Yep.
Uh, I mean, thank goodness for me waking up during that re-enlistment and actually going and reading it and being like, hell yeah, I'll swear allegiance to this.
Right?
And then COVID hit.
Yeah.
So,
Then we watched just how our government actively ignored or trampled on that Constitution.
and our military leaders did. So
Oh,
that's where, as while as veterans, we should have this allegiance to the Constitution, and we should use that as our standard bearer in
mm,
our in our military leadership. Well, there's also that tipping point where somebody dangles the carrot or makes a certain threat, like, "Hey, look, you're not going to get your star if you don't play this game. You're not going to get your extra sergeant major rock if you don't play this game." And COVID was the great eye opener to see who gives a shit about the Constitution and who is just looking for their seat at the table. And man, oh man, uh,
I'm so glad I retired before then because I think I would have retired then.
oh, people's true colors showed, especially up at the senior enlisted and senior, field grade and general officer level. True
Right.
colors emerged real quick,
Yeah.
and they did not like dissidents.
Mm,
I was not okay with a lot of stuff that was going on. My goodness. Luckily, I was part time for the guard, so I was not okay with it. I was vocal about it. I made a big stink. Got in a fight with the Special Forces commander, the Special Forces Command Sergeant Major. Now, I was an E8 at the time, so like whatever. You guys can pound sand. I don't really care.
mm,
But watching the coercion, watching the threats that these senior leaders made to junior troops was nauseating. And for for 15 years, however long it had been up until that point, I had loved putting the uniform on every single day. Active duty, guard duty, like loved putting the uniform on. I was like, yes, this is another day to kick butt for America.
right.
And there was this great eye opener between COVID, between Afghanistan pullout, between the Iraq withdrawal. Like,
It's
it's not passing the basic sniff test anymore.
nothing does anymore. I don't think so. I
So,
think that's why they're facing this recruiting challenge because I mean I studied this while I was on active duties that most our recruits, our new accessions, they either come from there's one of 5 states, and Tennessee's one of them, or they're legacy families. And it's
right.
80% of legacy families are now telling their kids, don't go in. So that's a huge shortfall, right?
Yeah.
So they broke trust, they broke faith with the
Yep.
people they're supposed to lead. Just like our government is breaking faith with the country
Yep,
And that's our Republican Party leadership is breaking faith with Republicans.
absolutely. Um, you know, for years and years, my son said nothing but like, "I want to be a Green Beret just like you. I want to jump out of planes with you. I want to do all this stuff." And I'm young enough, still young enough, and he's now old enough that I mean he couldn't enlist yet, but we're in that bracket where we could have had this crossover. And like, cool. Even if he just came in the National Guard and whatever, we would have got the opportunity to jump out of a plane together, do some cool stuff, go to the range,
Mm.
and then yeah, the trust was broken. I said, "Don't. There's no way, man." And he's 15 years old and he sees it. He's like, "I don't want to join that garbage."
Right.
But it's
Exactly what's going to happen to the Republican Party.
yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. That's sad to watch. Like I said, I loved putting my uniform on every day for 15 years, and then all of a sudden said, "Caden, do not do this." I mean, I fully encouraged him doing it, even knowing all the risks involved in it. Like this will
Right.
be an awesome father-son thing to do.
Right.
And even for probably the first year or so, I was saying, "Hey, don't be so gung ho." He's like, "No, Dad, I'm doing it. I'm doing it." And then he hit the maturity level where he read a couple news articles, saw Afghanistan, and was like, "Why would I do that?"
Right. If
Um,
leadership does not have my back, they won't have anybody's back right now, I don't think. So that's why I'm not encouraging anybody to join. People have talked to me in my current leadership coaching that I do right now. They said, "Hey, my kid's thinking about joining." I tell them, I would not have your child join. It is not the military of the 70s, 80s, and early 90s. It's
no,
not that anymore.
no,
We had the yellow ribbon around every tree during Desert Storm here in the country. Yeah, because the people trusted the military. That was the most trusted part of the United States government.
right?
Nobody can trust it now. Nobody can trust any facet of the government at all. And this now has trickled down into, like I said, the political parties. The Republican Party, the establishment Republican Party, is just the flip side of the coin to the communists. They are washing away the foundation of future Republicans coming into the party and voting to preserve the republic.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, hopefully organizations like the Young Republicans Federation can make a big enough dent fighting for conservatism, because that has to be the number one message, is that we're fighting for conservative values. Nobody gives a crap about your party values anymore.
Right.
Parties don't give a crap about their party values, so why should somebody who's looking for a home care about the party values?
Right.
I just wanted to try to pull this up real quick here. Oh my goodness. So, as you know, and listeners probably know, uh, they just passed a $95 billion foreign aid package. 61 billion going to Ukraine. Uh, 61 billion to Ukraine. I think it's like 16 to 20 billion for Israel. Another handful of billion for Taiwan, and then the other part of the bill. Sorry, it's not funny. Anyways, the other part of the bill directly pertains to Iran and banning TikTok. Just trying to pull up. Anyways, people can go look this up. Go look up the Republican voting record on the foreign aid bill. Again, $95 billion bill. I believe we only had one of our Tennessee U.S. representatives that voted no across the board. So we have nine U.S. reps here in Tennessee.
Right.
We have one Democrat rep. The other 8 are all Republicans.
It's crazy.
Isn't that? But the other 8 are all bona fide Republicans. And I believe only one of them voted no. I don't want to give a cent of our money overseas until we fix our problems here at home. The other 7 of them voted for at least a portion of that foreign funding bill. In a state as red as Tennessee, that should be a zero questions asked. We are going hardline no across the board.
Right.
I mean, we up here in Hamilton County, we're getting illegal immigrants here every single day. I mean, in the 4 years that I've been here, I'm just watching it increase over and over again. And I know that they're dropping them off in Brentwood outside of Nashville. I'm sure they're all over Sevierville. Like,
It's
even though
exit 407 Buc-ee's in bus loads. Largest Buc-ee's in the world, getting them dropped off right there at that exit.
So, I mean, even though we're not a border state, we have all these problems here at home directly related to open, porous borders, yet our bona fide Republicans up at the U.S. House seats are voting to give away $95 billion overseas. Guess what's attached to that bill for U.S. security?
None. Yep. I did a little digging. The number of school teachers, English as a second language school teachers hired in my county in the last 7 years has more than doubled.
That doesn't surprise me.
It's
who's paying for that?
Of course, the residents of Sevier County. We don't think so, but we're paying for every bit of that illegal. And our state legislature, they do have it within their power to turn off the magnet to illegal immigrants in our state, but they don't.
Well, everything ties back to federal funding,
right?
And unfortunately, when you have spineless, feckless, money-driven leaders, they will do whatever it takes to keep that funding stream going. One of the reasons why I was running, I'm not on the Republican ballot. I'm still running. Oh my God, I'm coming at you so hard. It's going to be like T1000.
But kicking some doors.
Yeah, it's going to be like T1000. They're going to be like, oh my God, he just won't stop. One of the reasons why I'm running is that. So the National Guard is a state asset. National Guard does not belong to Department of Army, does not belong to Department of Defense, does not belong to the federal government. First and foremost, it is a state asset. So all of your neighbors, all of your neighbors' kids, whoever, all of these National Guard troops here in Tennessee, they belong to the state of Tennessee. Governor Lee is essentially the commander-in-chief of the Tennessee National Guard until he decides to sign a piece of paper that says, hey, Department of Army or DOD or FEMA or whoever, you can federalize these troops and use them. Be that, going overseas, going on training missions, whatever. First and foremost, a state asset. So for the past 20 plus years during the global war on terror, the National Guard has been bastardized by the federal government, by Department of Army, by DOD. They've been sending them on deployments. They've been Iraq, Afghanistan, Africa, Philippines, everywhere under the sun where active duty troops were going. And they've been used for backfill. There's deployment to dwell time. You can only be deployed so long, and then you have to be home for so long. So they use National Guard and reserves to backfill those active duty dwell times. Technically, the National Guard can only deploy to war if it's an actual war. Global war on terror never passed Congress as a war. Right? That's in the past though. National Guard has already been utilized that way for 20 plus years, which legally they worked around it, but in the basic sense, National Guard can't go to war unless it's an actual war. Granted, I think all that did bolster the strength of the National Guard and bolster their capabilities, but the global war on terror is dead. We wasted 20 years, lost all these lives, didn't win anything. Now the federal government is still trying to utilize the National Guard just like they would active duty troops. So part of all this goes back to running for the state legislator. It's a state asset. Does anyone in the state legislature ever put their hands up and say, hold on, we cannot legally use the National Guard in this manner? Nobody does, because nobody knows. One of the main uses for the National Guard, one of the main reasons the National Guard exists at a state level, it's called DISCA. It's Defense Support of Civil Authorities. So DISCA, this Defense Support of Civil Authorities, is meant to be used for natural disasters. So flooding, tornadoes, wildfires, landslides, whatever. When some natural disaster happens that the civil authorities can't handle, cool. Let's activate the guard guys. It could also be used for spontaneous riots. If there was a spontaneous riot, something that was not expected, overwhelmed the local police, overwhelmed the state police, overwhelmed all the local authorities. Let's bring in the guard. Well, the National Guard this DISCA mission has been used over and over again, and they'll call anything DISCA. So as long as you call it DISCA, they can then try to federalize the National Guard. Well, here's the kicker. We, as the state of Tennessee, does not have to sign that piece of paper saying that we will allow the National Guard to be federalized. So, the Tennessee National Guard has guys that are going to go sit over in Europe somewhere. You and the listeners can do your digging, but see how many guys are going to go sit over there in Europe and see how many we're sending down to the border in Texas.
Right.
Guarantee one is way higher than the other. Federal money versus state security.
Right.
Federal money. When you look back at 2020, during the Black Lives Matter and Antifa riots that were happening all over the country, but in particularly Washington, D.C. Well, when Black Lives Matter and Antifa were rioting in D.C., the D.C. Metro Police were told not to do anything. The state police didn't show up. The local sheriffs didn't do anything. The Capitol Police didn't do anything. What they did is they called the National Guard from across the country and they deployed them to D.C. on a DISCA mission. So we had Green Berets, National Guard Green Berets from Utah, from Alabama, from Florida, from all over the country, descending on D.C., doing civilian policing because the civilian police were told not to do anything. Well, like I said at the beginning of this DISCA explanation, a spontaneous, unexpected, uncontrollable riot may be a cause to call in the National Guard. When you tell your police not to do anything, when you don't have local authorities do anything, when you create a riot, when you create a crisis, that is not a DISCA mission. That is not a reason for military members to suit up and stand against U.S. civilians. The fact that they did that, the fact that any commanders, the fact that any governors signed off on that mission was nauseating. And that was in 2020. It has not gotten any better since then.
Right.
If you look just a month or two ago up in New York City, so there's all these videos and news articles about the subways in New York City having the subway transit police and National Guard members policing and doing unconstitutional searches, so violating civilians' Fourth Amendment rights in the subway. So you have guys in their military uniforms opening people's bags, checking them before they get on and off trains. And they called it a DISCA mission, a defense support of civil authorities, because there's a crime wave in New York. There's not a crime wave in New York. Police aren't allowed to do their jobs, prosecutors don't prosecute, and people are released without bail. That is a manufactured crisis. That is not an excuse to have military members violating U.S. citizens' rights. It's disgusting to me. So when I look at all of this, and it's been going on more and more with increasing frequency, state legislators need to have the backbone, need to have the knowledge, need to have the understanding to say, look, Governor Lee, you cannot utilize Tennessee National Guard that way. Or, obviously that's my vested interest, but like all these people who have New York National Guard, Utah, Florida, whoever allowed these units to go on DISCA missions that were not, absolutely not. They're violations of U.S. citizens' constitutional rights and blatant violations of what we swore an oath to as military members.
Right.
That needs to be stopped.
It's weak leadership. I've always stated that Governor Lee is a weak leader. I call him a trans-Republican. He identified as a Republican just to get elected in a red state. He didn't find a Democrat cause that he did not donate to before he became a governor.
Come on, man. He wears jeans and plaid shirts.
Hey, but Nate, it's been great talking to you. I'd like to get you on again here in the near future as we get through the campaign, closer to both the ends of our campaigns. But now that you're going to be running as a write-in, Will it be for the August primary or for the November general?
So I will be. Everyone is welcome to write my name in the August primary, and I encourage them to do so. I will be campaigning very hard from now till August, pushing for people to write in on the primary.
Mhm.
The way the technical pieces work, uh, I can only file a write-in. I'll file a official write-in, so all of the write-in votes will be counted in November.
Okay.
Um, I You could file paperwork to be a write-in on the primary. However, technically, if you lose a primary,
You can't run in the general.
November. Whereas, it's a long shot, but it is doable. Um, it can be done where we win as a write-in in November. I've got now till November to run, to knock on every single door in Granger and County. Um,
That's my job. I got to knock on all those doors.
yeah, I had your page open in the background. That's why I said that. I get now till November to knock on every single door, pull people, and encourage the write-in. I'm encouraging people to show up and write in August as well. It's repetition. Just
Right.
crawl, walk, run, man. Let's go.
All right. Well, I'll do my best. Everybody's listening to this program that lives in those counties. Go vote for him in the November and in the primary. Let's get him across the finish line so we can tell the establishment GOP here in Tennessee that we can't stand for this anymore. We got a state to save.
Right. And ironically, we're going to be their best allies.
Right. Well, Nate, it's been great talking to you, and
Well, thank you, Larry.
we'll get back with you soon.
All right. See ya.
Take care. Well, folks, that wraps up the entire interview. Before I close out this week's show with God's Word, I want to reiterate my message to the Tennessee Republican Party in general, and to Chairman Scott Golden and the members of the State Executive Committee in particular. My fellow Tennesseans, let's define the words coward and cowardice. First is the word cowardice. That is defined as a lack of courage to face danger, difficulty, opposition, pain, etc. Now, a coward, that is a person who lacks courage in facing danger, difficulty, opposition, or pain. A coward is a timid or easily intimidated person. Intimidation can come in many forms, and in this case, Mr. Golden and the members of the SEC are intimidated by actual Republicans, it seems. Tennessee Republican Party Chairman Scott Golden, along with the State Executive Committee, by their silence on certain bylaw violations that protect establishment candidates within their ranks, speaks volumes about the type of people they are. It also demonstrates that the type of leadership they provide for the party over the past few years has become toxic as well as cowardly. Also, the action they took in their decision to remove candidates from the ballots all across the state of Tennessee for failing to meet the bona fide requirements of those same bylaws, that too speaks volumes. Both actions can only lead to the following conclusion. GOP Chairman Scott Golden is a coward. Yes, I'm saying it. He's a coward, and his cowardice has infected the State Executive Committee. Remember, a coward is a person who lacks courage in facing both difficulty and opposition. The opposition in these cases are myself, as a candidate who does meet the bona fide requirements in the bylaws, together with the conservative candidates, Golden and the rest of his go-along to get along cowards in the State Executive Committee that kicked off the ballot statewide. Well, we stand in opposition to the good old boy system Scott Golden has created in the Tennessee Republican Party. What do I and many of the candidates that were removed from the ballot have in common? We are conservatives that are eager and willing to serve so that we can save our beloved Tennessee from the establishment GOP members and the commies. These establishment Republicans would see our state turn into California rather than to relinquish any of their power. Many of us are veterans that actually know what it means to swear and follow an oath to the Constitution. We represent difficulty to those currently sitting at the table of power in the state Republican Party because we are true Republicans, seeking to make a difference in the halls of our capital in Nashville and preserve our state and the Republic. This cowardice, exhibited by Scott Golden and the rest of his cronies in the Tennessee GOP, undermines trust in our party by Republican voters, many of whom have held their nose and voted for the only candidate on a ballot with an R next to their name for many years now. They've done that because they are the only option Scott and his pack of cowardly lions have provided for the people. It's time for accountability and integrity to prevail. Heck, it's just time for accountability and integrity to become the norm in the Tennessee Republican Party, not the exception. For now, though, this week's wisdom from God's Word, we visit a bit of scripture that deals directly with the cowardly and detestable who share great company, as pointed out in God's holy word. It comes to us from the book of Revelation, chapter 21, verse 8. But as for the cowardly, the faithless, the detestable, as for murderers, the sexually immoral, sorcerers, the idolaters, and all liars, their portion will be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death. Once again, I will close with this plea. I'm humbly asking that you all take a stand in the arena with me so that we can restore our state and our nation back to their foundational principles of individual liberty and small government. Until next week, reveille, it's time to wake up.